Hey guys, it's Xygor. I've been playing the heck out of Diablo 4 ever since it released a few days ago, and the class that I've been playing is Barbarian as I always plan. And it's just so cool. I think the arsenal system is one of the coolest parts of it. I mean, who doesn't want to use four weapons, right? And there's several viable builds for the Barbarian, but this guide is going to be for the Whirlwind build, and that's the build that I've gravitated toward. It's probably the best build in the game, or close to it, even after the nerfs that just came down a few days ago, specifically to Challenging Shout and a bracer that I don't have yet called Gores. But this guide is going to serve to be a complete guide for the Whirlwind build, even post-nerf, because I'm going to show you what I've done to kind of get around those things, and there's some modifications and optimizations you can do to deal with the nerf and still have your shouts up a lot. So we'll get into that in a second. But first, let's just get into the skills. So quick, brief skill tree. We're going to go with Lunging Strike because it allows you to travel a small distance and apply a bleed. I just go for this second one to get to the next tier. You don't need a third tier for this. Whirlwind, I have 9 ranks. This is the bread and butter of the build. This is what you'll be using to deal almost all of your damage. There's 2 choices here. You can either go with Violent Whirlwind for increased damage if you channel it a long time, or Furious Whirlwind that applies base damage as bleed. This is arguable, but I like the bleed damage. There'll be a lot of times where you won't even channel for 2 seconds because of how we're using it. Next here, we'll just say we're going to go with all 3 shouts. Rallying Cry, this is what's going to give you Fury and Resource Regeneration, Fury Regeneration, and make you unstoppable. It's one of the biggest, most important pieces to this build. We're going to basically max it out if we can to get even more Fury Regeneration, and we're going to go with Unstoppable to modify it, as I said, and also this one to give you more resource when you use it. We're also going to go with Challenging Shout. This is your defensive obligatory skill that's really going to allow you to stay in fights with tough mobs and swarms of enemies all around you. It really gives you a lot of damage mitigation, and you can get additional fury each time you get hit, and you're going to get some bonus maximum life. So this is very important. This did get a little bit of a nerf recently. So it doesn't salve it. It doesn't mitigate as much damage as it previously did, although we can get around it. Warcry is basically your damage enhancement. This is something that everyone needs. It's going to be very important to spam as well. It synergizes with a lot of the items that we have to enhance your shouts as well. A power Warcry is what we're going with. And then I also got 3 Booming Voice, very important passive skill here. 3 Ray Leader gives you a little bit of extra healing, and Guttural Yell, a little bit more mitigation. Aggressive Resistance, and we're going to go for 3 Prolific Fury for that additional Fury regeneration. Come down here, we're going to take Hamstring. This applies your slow. Your bleeding affects slow enemies. This allows you to do more damage because there's a lot of things in the game that you have at your disposal that will do more damage to slowed enemies, so it's really important. We got 3 Pit Fighter, and we also got 3 No Mercy. Down here we got Thick Skin, and then we're going 3 Counter Offensive, just some more passives. We're going to go with Wrath of the Berserker for a few reasons. This just does an incredible amount of damage. It's really vital, and you'll have it up a long time. It also helps a little bit with your resource regeneration, and you get a speed increase as well. It's just the best. When you're starting this build, I think you can go Call of the Ancients at the beginning, but this ends up being the best by far. And here is the key one. Unbridled Rage is what we're going to do for the key passive. You can't go this right away, but I have enough gear on me right now to make this work. Core skills deal 135% increased damage, but cost 100% more fury. In this build, it is very, very big on consuming fury, but we have to stack a lot of items and Paragon, as I'll show you later, to get to this point. Before you get to this, you'll either probably want to take Unconstrained or Walking Arsenal. I think Unconstrained is a good choice before you kind of get this engaged. Alright, let's get into the gear pieces. So for the helm, you're really looking for cooldown. Very important to get cooldown here. I have the modification that gives the armor enhancement with this one, but cooldown, so important. It only rolls on the amulet and helm. You need to get a high cooldown roll on the helm for this build. I have 12.9, which is decent. That can go higher. I've seen people that have 14, some people probably even have 15 up here if you have a high enough item level item. This is a key piece, Rage of Harogoth. This allows you to reset your cooldowns or reduce them by 1.5 seconds sometimes when on a lucky hit. And this is one of the pieces that we're plugging in here after the nerfs to get that little more edge on the cooldowns. This is pretty rare. It's a unique item. I've only seen one of them so far, and I'm level 76. But this is a key piece as well. It's one of those pieces that's going to give you a little bit more edge on cooldown. For gauntlets, I have not gotten the Gores. The Gores would be considered the Biss, and that is an item where when you stop the channel of your Whirlwind, it unleashes an explosion that deals something like 20% of the damage that you had done in that Whirlwind. I don't have that yet. It's really good. That got nerfed. It was a higher percentage earlier, but when I get it, I'm slotting it in here. But right now, you want to get Whirlwind ranks and critical strike chance on these bracers. Temerity is a defensive piece. We're going to use this for barrier. This is just an all-encompassing defensive item that kind of keeps you in the mix when you're doing the high-tier rifts here. It's really important for that. Boots, we're going to make sure we have movement speed and fury cost reduction. Fury cost reduction, really important in this build, especially because we're taking Unbridled Rage. Any additional fury cost reduction you can get is good, and I think that only rolls on boots and rings and amulets, so that's vital too. Weapons, you're going to have 2 two-handers and 2 one-handers. 2 gems in the two-handers, 1 gem in the one-handers. You're going to want green gems because this allows you to do critical strike damage to vulnerable enemies. It just scales better than the other options you have. It's better than Overpower. What you're looking for rolls on these is vulnerability damage. It's incredible. It's in its own damage bucket. It's really great. Critical hit damage, core skill damage. Those are probably the top 3. And outside of that, damage while berserking, damage to slow enemies, and some others. There's kind of several ones that can be in the mix for that. For the one-handers, basically same modifiers here that we're going for. And for the slashing weapon, you want to have basically the same modifiers. I do not have a good aspect on this yet. I actually just extracted this one that I'm going to put on it. So this one will go on that, so don't think you don't want a Thorns aspect on this. But other than that, my aspects are pretty good. This one increases the Whirlwind damage as long as it's channeled. This one gives you more damage while you have a barrier. And this one does some base damage as bleed while berserking. Amulet, here's a really important piece for this build. You want to get cooldown, and the other stats are kind of up to you. All defensive skills really good for Barb. There's several options. You can get Fury cost reduction here, I believe, too. This is not the best amulet, and I have some room to improve. It's also not the best aspect. I think that I could do some shifting around a little bit. Once I get Gores, I'm going to put this imprint on the amulet. Rings, 2 very important pieces are these rings. The Band of Echoing Fury and the Bold Chieftain Circle. The Band of Echoing Fury makes your shout skills generate Fury per second. Now this can roll 2 to 4 when you get this legendary, and it's really important to try to get a 4. You can it's usable with 2 or 3, but man, it's so much better when you're getting 4 each time, because all 3 of your shouts are up like 75-80% of the time. You can push it close to 100 if you do the right thing. It's really important. And this one is probably the most important. This item got nerfed. It got nerfed so that basically it's up to a maximum of 6 seconds that you get the reduction for it. It didn't used to have that limitation, but it's still good. It's still viable. It basically reduces the cooldowns of your shouts per enemy that the shout inflicts or harms or targets, whatever you want to say. Very important. So that's basically the gear. I'll have more specifics in the build link below. And let's get into the arsenal system. Alright, so for arsenal, we're going to have basically our lunging strike is going to be attached to our dual wield weapons. And for our whirlwind, we're going to put that to our bladed weapon, so our slashing weapon. I have an axe right now. You can put it with a sword or a polearm as well. Doesn't really matter there, but the key thing I want you to walk away with in this is for the arsenal expertise. You want to have the sword expertise when you have an axe, and when you're wearing an axe, yeah, you want to have the sword, and when you're wearing a sword, you want to go with two-handed axe expertise for increased damage to vulnerable enemies. That way you can get both, and the sword is really important because of the bleeds. You're going to be taking advantage of a lot of bleed damage with this build. Alright, I talked about the gems. The green gems, just totally the best in weapons. There's kind of a debate right now whether the fortified gems, which are the blues, are better than the hit point gems. Those are the reds. I think the way that damage scales, the people I talk to that have kind of crunched numbers on this, is that the fortified option is way better than the health. You're going to want that fortification mitigation. We're one of only 3 classes that has fortified, and it's kind of OP right now, so this is what you want to go. For the jewelry, you want to go skulls. You get armor. 250 armor at this level. I have higher level gems to get to once I level up to 80 is the next tier, I believe. But armor is so good in this game, and this is really your only choice in the jewelry. Let's get into the Paragon board. Alright, so Paragon, I'm going to just show you where I am at, and I've gotten to 4 glyphs already. So first Paragon board, and again, I will have clarifications down in the link below for kind of a brief synopsis and guide for my Paragon planning. So first Paragon, we're going to go with Exploit here. Now there's several choices you can go here. Exploit just gives you a lot of vulnerable damage. This got a slight nerf, but it's still really good. Alternatively, Wrath works in this starting board as well, but I went Exploit. Exploit is definitely one of the top few glyphs that we can get. It's just so good. The next one is going to be Martial. Martial just helps with our shout cooldowns, gives a little edge that whenever we cast a shout, the next one is going to be reduced by 1.2 seconds. You get a little bit of bonus stats as well. So Martial, very good. Third one, I went with Wrath. Just more damage with core skills, of which Whirlwind is one, and that's the one we're taking advantage of here. And it's really important to have that one. And then the fourth one, this is one of the ways that, again, we're getting around some of those nerfs. We're going to go with Disembowel. And Disembowel works here because you can get enough willpower in this radius to make it work. But basically what you're getting out of this is that when you're killing bleeding enemies, it has a 10% chance to reduce the cooldowns of your non-ultimate active cooldowns by 1 second. So that's all of our shouts. So every time you killed a bleeded enemy, and every enemy you attack is going to be bleeding, you have that chance. It's a dice roll every time of getting those cooldowns on the shouts. And if you're in big packs, you're going to get this a lot. Sometimes you're not going to get it, but it's helpful because it's just that additional layer that's helping our shouts get up over and over again. This build is very shout intensive. You really want to keep them up at all times and basically unload with Wrath of Berserker on elite packs and bosses. So let's get into the gameplay. Alright, let's show some gameplay here. So I'm using my shouts whenever I come across a lot of mobs. I made the determined there to pop Wrath, and you're basically wanting to put your shouts out right when they come on cooldown again. You're going to be taking a lot of damage in these high tier rifts. This is a 23, and these are no joke. Basically, if you're caught kind of with your pants down when your challenging shout isn't up, you're going to die. So this can be a little bit clunky. Sometimes they won't be up on cooldown right away, and you have to move around to try to mitigate some of that time. But basically, you're just going to want to spin to win through all the mobs that you can that come up. Avoid affixes on the ground. Pop Wrath when you're in a lot of elites. And also pop Wrath to get out of CC. That's a very viable use for this because there's a lot of things that basically freeze you in place. And that's basically like a death knell for barbs. As you can see here, we're just kind of spinning around, killing some mobs. We got some elites here. So we're just going to spend some time spinning and winning and go from there. That's basically the build. You're going to want to, when the shots are on cooldown, you either have to get away or kind of find some creative ways to pass time, either by using Lunging Strike. Lunging Strike is also a movement tool that you can use, and that is helpful. That's basically it. This is a fun build. It's got a way to go for this one to be optimized, especially because I don't have gores and a few other things, and my Paragon board is not nearly filled. But this is still a viable spec. I expect it to continue to be good unless they nerf it again. And it can get around the nerfs that were there. It's just not ridiculously uber powerful like it was before. Alright guys, there's the guide. Hope this helps you. Let me just tell you that this spec is still viable even after those nerfs. Sure, we have to do a few things to get around it, but there's some creative ways that the community is working to make the Whirlwind Barb work. It's still fun, it's still viable, it's still powerful, and I hope this guide helped some people that want to play Barb be interested in doing it. So if you like this guide, please like the video. Leave a comment below about whether you like this build, how you're doing with it, what are some tricks you found with it, or if you think anything that I've done could be improved upon. So thanks, and have a great day.